first item on the agenda, thank you, is a request for continuance under a notice of intent, Comcast North Central Division and NSTAR Electric Company, Surf Drive, for permission to install a 4.5-mile-long submarine hybrid cable across Vineyard Sound from Falmouth to Tisbury that includes the installation of an 8-foot by 16-foot approach pit for drilling, 6-foot wide by 14-foot long by 8-foot deep manhole, 3-foot by 3-foot Comcast manhole, an 80-foot long trench for a fiber optic cable within 2 to 4-inch conduits to run north, then east under Mill Road to connect to existing NSTAR infrastructure via new and existing duck banks and the associated clearing, excavating, grading, and landscaping. Okay, they've requested a continuance. We've had some other continuances on this, but to April 24th, because there's a referral that's been sent to the Cape Cod Commission to develop a development of regional impact hearing. And so the referral has been sent from the office. Jen sent it on the 24th. And the Cape Cod Commission will need the CONCOM vote for the file, but we'll still need to open this. So could I have
motion to continue till April 24th.
Thank you.
Second.
Are there any questions on the board? Any questions from the audience? Okay, motion on the table is to continue to April 24th. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstention? Unanimous, so moved. Okay, next one is James Lucio, lot 532 Acapesket Road, East Falmouth, for permission to construct a new 4-bedroom, single-family house with attached garage, deck with stairs, to install a retaining wall, Title V sewage disposal system, dry wells, driveway, trench drain, utilities, and associated clearing, excavating, grading, and landscaping. And the request is to continue to May 1st.
So moved.
Second.
Okay? Got those, Susan? Okay, we have a motion on the motion and a second on the table to continue to May 1st. Are there any further questions? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstention? Unanimous, so moved. Next one is Gail Bambrick, 12 Circle Road, Wacoit, for permission to demolish and remove the existing wooden retaining wall, stones, cinder blocks, deck and patio, and reconstruct a deck with footings, patio, vinyl sheeting, retaining wall, install 12-inch diameter fiber rolls, native woody plants, and associated clearing, excavating, grading, and landscaping. There's a request to continue this to May 1st.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion and the second on the table to continue to May 1st. Any questions in the room? Okay, all in favor of the motion on the table say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous, so moved. Okay, has anyone read the minutes?
I can make a motion to accept the meeting minutes of February 13th, 2013.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to continue the minutes of February 13. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous, so moved. Then we have minutes of February 27th.
Read them, I find them substantially correct and move their adoption.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to adopt the minutes of February 27th. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous, so moved. Unless you gentlemen in the back row are here for 374 Mill Road to present, I think we're going to need a continuance. I mean,
I made a motion to table.
A table,
374 Mill Road till the applicant appears.
Second.
okay. Motion and a second to table 374 Mill Road. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous, so moved. Okay, this is a little bit of a problem. So, James Lucio, lot 532 Acapesket Road is continued until May 1st. Comcast is continued until April 24th. Is that correct? Yes.
Correct.
Yes.
Gail Bambrick is continued until, that's 12 Circle Road, until May 1st. And continued hearings, and I don't think any of you gentlemen sitting there in the audience are prepared to do any of these, are you?
Orders?
We can. But we have to unfortunately table each of these continued
Okay, I'll
hearings
move
first.
We table FX Casino.
Second.
Are you with me, Susan? Okay, motion is second
Oh, someone's
to
here.
continue FX Casino. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous, so moved. Could I have an on-table for Raymond and Ann Carlin, 374 Mill Road?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor of the vote on the table, which is to on-table Raymond and Ann Carlin, 374 Mill Road, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimous, so moved. All hearings of the Falmouth Conservation Commission are heard simultaneously under the authority of the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and the Falmouth Wetlands Bylaw. Although a single decision is issued, it represents a separate decision under each authority. Request for hearings under a notice of intent. First one, Raymond and Ann Carlin, 374 Mill Road, Falmouth, for permission to construct and maintain a one-car garage and an addition, relocate the gravel driveway, utilities, remove an existing shed, reroute or replace the sewer service, and associated clearing, excavating, grading, and landscaping. Do I have any questions before we start? No, I don't. So, Mr. McGrath, you want to give your presentation, and then we'll go down the board and see what the questions are. Thank you.
My name is Michael McGrath. I'm a registered engineer and registered professional land surveyor. I work for Holmes and McGrath. My firm prepared the plans and the notice of intent that describes the work that is proposed to be permitted under the Wetlands Bylaw and the Wetlands Protection Act. The site is located on Mill Road at the intersection of Seagull Lane. Vineyard Sound is about somewhere down here. The this lies in a land that is subject to, how to describe it? It's a special flood hazard area. It's called a velocity zone, and that the waves are expected to be higher than 3 foot. It's actually in an area that says V18 elevation equals 13. 13 is the top of the wave in a 1 in 100 year storm. The proposal is that under the zoning bylaw, we allowed a one-time addition in the velocity zone of 200 square feet. And so the proposal is to add on to the existing structure a 200 square foot addition that's on the northerly side of the house, towards the Seagull Lane portion of the land. He also is going to build a separate structure, a garage. There's an existing shed that's on the site, and the shed will be removed. There'll be a proposed garage, and the driveway will be slightly adjusted to fit the location of the garage. The garage has to be 10 foot off the sidelines. So the work is within land subject to coastal storm flowage. The plan shows across the street, there's a bordering vegetated wetland against Saw Pond, and there's a 100-foot buffer from the vegetated wetland, but the only resource area here that matters is the velocity zone. We file a notice of intent based on the staff recommendation that we should file a notice, because it's in a velocity zone. Are there any specific questions I can answer concerning the plan?
Ed, you want to start?
Yes, Mr. McGrath, let's see, I made some notes today. I'll start on the, I guess it's the northern side of the property, Seagull Lane. You have two, proposed leaching trenches there, as opposed to dry wells. Can you give us the rationale for that?
Well, yes. No leaching structure should go into the groundwater, because that would, the bottom line, if pollutants are introduced into the groundwater, there's basically no oxygen in the water that's suitable enough to mitigate the pollutants. So we dug a shallow test pit. We found out where the groundwater is, And based on that, we have shown leaching trenches. And we're showing that there's 12 inches minimum clearance between the bottom of the leaching trenches and the groundwater.
Okay. Another question, I did observe an air conditioning unit in the area where you're going to put the addition, but you did not show any place to relocate the AC unit. You probably want to do that.
You know, if we touch it, it has to be above the velocity zone, so it'll be in the upper portion of the addition.
Okay. And the existing deck, was just, it seemed to be added at a later date. Is there a permit on record for that?
I did not look for any such permit. I don't have any evidence that either way.
Yeah, I think we should just look into that. And the garage, a new structure in a velocity zone. Are you proposing to elevate the first floor of the garage?
Actually, a garage is allowed use in, it's not habitable space, so we don't need to elevate the garage per se.
Those are my questions.
Okay, thanks, Ed.
No questions.
Tommy, Tom?
They were answered, thank you.
Courtney? I'll come back to you, Mike.
Garage, I want to follow up on Ed's question. I know the building department doesn't have an issue, it doesn't have to be elevated, but I'm wondering if it falls under our own regulations.
FEMA has
You know, I'm not
diagrams
sure.
that
Or
show,
have breakaway walls or whatever the hell it is.
my description is the proposed garage, a freestanding accessory structure. The proposed garage will be constructed in accordance with the state building code for such structures in a velocity zone. The proposed garage is not part of subject to the 200 square foot addition limitation in FWR 1038-444. The proposed garage will be principally supported by a system or piers or piles. Breakaway panels will be installed and will close the garage. The proposed breakaway panels are not part of the foundation.
Thank you.
Yeah, so that's something we can discuss in deliberation. Is that it?
Yeah.
Michelle?
For the leaching trenches, you say it's going to be a foot separation to groundwater. Was that groundwater at the time that you dug a test pit, or is that seasonal high groundwater? Or both? Did the test pit in the spring?
We just did the test pit in the last, the third week in February, so it seems to me that based on the amount of rain that we've got, that should be pretty close to the highest groundwater.
And the 6 linear feet, was that based on a certain calculation?
Yes, it
volume?
was. I don't have it with
Would
me,
you,
but
would you like to
Is it
clarify
based
that?
on how we normally do dry wells? Because dry wells strike me that they might have more volume than this 6 foot by, what is it, 1 foot deep. So I was just curious how it was. I agree with you that going linear and shallow is the way to go with high groundwater. I was just curious.
in fact, we ought to be putting the runoff onto the turf grass to be blunt. We should be putting these in swales, but somehow.
Well, this is roof runoff, so it isn't going to be polluted like a runoff.
My roof runoff has got pollutants in it from bird droppings.
Well, that is true.
And things like that. So, in any case, it is sized by the traditional way that we calculate things.
You could do a rain garden instead. if you want to do so.
No, thank you.
All right. No other questions?
Okay? Mike?
The garage, it is in effect a one-story garage.
That's right. There's no habitable space. The bylaw, zoning bylaw limits to 18 feet to the peak, so there's going to be some storage space that gets it, but it's not habitable.
I'm happy. Oh, there is a gas meter or a glass line that you'll be digging up, so it's not shown. So. But I figure somebody will find it one way or another.
That's why we have dig safe.
I was going to say, I hope DigSafe comes.
DigSafe doesn't do on the line, Mike. Does off the street.
That's not correct. Gas, they go everywhere. When you call dig safe, the natural gas goes everywhere. They don't. It's the only utility that does that.
Because it's their pipe.
Okay, Mike, Ed asked a question about the deck. We could close the hearing and make a decision based on, we can look into the aerials to see if we have a permit, or you could ask for a continuance to clarify that.
I've looked in what I have with me, and all I have is that we did look at the assessors records, and the house has been built in the 50s, but I don't have anything that says when the deck was built.
Well, so I'm giving you the option of,
It would seem to be appropriate that I leave the record open for a written submission about the age of the deck.
well, we're not going to leave the record open. We're going to either close the hearing and make a decision based on what we have, or give you a continuance for 2 weeks.
I guess I will have to ask for continuance for 2 weeks. On behalf of the applicant, I'm asked a 2-week continuance.
Which is what, till the 17th?
Yeah.
Okay, and that's just to clarify, to put into the record whether that deck
Yes, yes.
is part of the, all right. So, you just made a motion?
Yes, I
For the
did.
17th?
That is correct.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion on the second, motion and a second on the table to continue this till April 17th, to clarify legal status of deck. Are there any other questions on the board? Are there any questions from the audience? Okay, hearing none, motion is second on the table to continue to April 17th. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous, so moved. Thanks, Mike. Okay, please be patient with me. It's trying to keep two things in mind at the same time. Okay, now we're on to continued requests for a hearing under a notice of intent, and our first continued request is tabled, so first thing I'd like to do is untable that.
Motion on table 286 Grand Ave. Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous, so moved. Okay. Well, Mike? FX Casino LLC, 286 Grand Avenue, Falmouth, for permission to conduct beach management and maintenance on the coastal beach that includes raking, screening, cleaning, grading, beach nourishment, and the associated grading and landscaping. And I have no questions for you before you begin your presentation tonight.
Thank you. Madam Chairman, members of the commission, my name is Michael Borselli from Falmouth Engineering, and I represent the applicant. This hearing was continued so we could resolve a couple of minor issues here, and we had not received the DEP file number. One of the issues that things you requested, I should say, was a letter from the beach superintendent indicating that they were going to work cooperatively with the casino to do the beach management. It would be on, the concept is to do it at the same time as far as the general beach management practices, not the beach nourishment, but the beach management practices. In fact, we expect and hope that what will happen is when the Falmouth Heights Public Beach is cleaned, raked, as you have already approved under an order of conditions, that it'll just continue on in front of the casino, which is part of the same beach system. We propose the activities to mirror and model the order of conditions that this commission issued for the Falmouth Heights Beach. The two outstanding matters were first getting a letter that supports that concept from the beach committee, which I have for you, and I have copies for each member. It's signed by Don Hoffer. There's also a plan that has a very minor revision on it that I was only able to make this week because of awaiting a response from town council.
Thank you.
And Jim said it would be appropriate to submit it less than a week before the public hearing. And this is a copy for the record, for the file, I guess.
I can take it.
No, you can't take it, he has to take it.
That's just for the file.
Oh, Mike can take it. Mike can take it. But, Mike, aye.
The other two items were, we were contemplating beach nourishment, and we still are, but the access to deliver the sand was going to utilize travel over the town of Falmouth property. We had a discussion with Mr. Hoffer, and he was fine with that. However, Jennifer spoke with town council, and they determined that in order to do that, you need approval from Board of Selectmen. So we're no longer contemplating using town property to get the sand to the beach. We would get it to the beach using our property only. That may include one of those other methods of sand delivery that we talked about, that you don't need to access with a piece of equipment, larger than a Bobcat. We also investigated access under the building, because if you remember, there's a underground, under-structure parking, and the sections of lattice work under the building are all removable. And a Bobcat can easily get under there. So one section of the lattice work could be removed, the sand could be delivered to the driveway, and if the old-fashioned method of delivering the sand to the beach is used, then it could be utilized without having to go on any other property. So I think that issue's been addressed. And then finally, there was one small area where some debris had been historically dumped. By debris, I mean shells and some seaweed that was clean on the beach was stockpiled, for lack of a better term. In the area I measured, it was about 25 square feet, and it was in the dune area. So we put a note on the plan that says to remove that and restore it with American beach grass. I think that was it.
To remove it?
Remove it, dispose of it, plant it with American beach grass.
It being the pile of,
Debris.
oh, but not the cobbles.
No, just the one small pile of shells and seaweed that Jen noticed that was dumped in that dune that's there today. If you go to the site, you'll see it.
But it's all natural?
It was dumped there.
It was dumped there. It's natural if you mean if it was
Oh.
cleaned off the
If it's,
beach.
if it's just shells and vegetation, that should be incorporated into the dune.
Okay.
If it has hypodermic needles in it, or other things that we hear get washed on beaches, which I won't mention, then it should be disposed of properly.
I defer to you. I'm
Okay?
only
I mean,
going
if it's a
by-
natural material, that's the kind of stuff that helps build up dunes.
We will defer to you. I'm only telling you what the recommendation was of your administrator, and we did it in response to her request. But if you think it makes more sense to do what you just suggested, we're happy to do that.
Okay. I'll have to go down and look to see what it looks like. Ed, would you like to ask any further questions?
Yeah, I do have one question. If I understood you correctly, Mr. Boselli, you said that you'll be going to seek permission from the Board of Selectmen for the beach nourishment. Did I misunderstand that?
Yes, you did.
Yeah, he said if he had to deliver the sand over the beach, over the public beach, then he would have to ask permission. But if he doesn't have to do that, he doesn't have to ask permission.
Okay, well then, let me go on to point number 2. What you're suggesting here is that the town will be doing work with town employees on a beach which is private property.
4 feet?
Hmm?
40 feet.
40 feet?
No, for a fee,
fee.
for a fee.
Oh, for a fee.
In other words, they'll have to
that
pay
was
the
my
town.
question. Is there going to be some kind of compensation for that? Okay,
Yes.
all right, thank
And,
you.
and just to elaborate a little bit, it's done on other private beaches, and the funds are paid to their general donation fund, beach committee.
And who signs off on that agreement? Is that the Board of Selectmen?
I believe it's a direct negotiation between the beach committee and the private property owner.
Okay,
That's my understanding.
all right. That's my question.
Okay, thanks. Tom?
No question, it's just a comment that I'm happy to see that they're gonna be working with the town to do the maintenance through the season on the beach. And I would agree that if this pile of shells, if it's mostly natural material that they collected through cleaning the beach, I mean, I think it makes sense to just plant it if you can and leave it there. That's all.
I'm not on the corner.
Oh,
Surprise.
then I guess you can't comment. But you are, Mike. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
Mike?
I like it. Only know, outside of anything, there was a couple, what most appear like fence posts, metal fence posts sticking along that property line on the, I guess it's the west end. They look like a, hazard to a human as they walk along. If, while they're putting that down, they could beat those things below the sand or pull them out or do something. Not my jurisdiction to act, but it just looks like somebody could get hurt.
That seems reasonable. I mean, if you want to make it more definitive.
I don't know where it sits. If it happens, it would make me happy as a person.
I'll mention it to the
Okay.
casino folks.
Yeah, and just, if you do that, just confirm, get a approval from Jen. If it's something that they didn't ask
Sure,
for, it
I
is not
understand.
disorder.
I don't think it's really I don't think it hurts the environment in any way other than the human being who's going to step on the damn thing. So that
Might add blood to the system.
might add blood to the system. That's it. I'm done.
Courtney?
No questions.
Michelle?
No questions.
Okay, Jen,
One more?
okay.
Yeah, I just have a question here. I guess it's related to the issue of beach access. I don't frequent this beach in the summer, but I do believe that on a public beach to the east gets crowded, and a lot of people tend to, I believe, migrate to the beach in front of the casino. And if there's an arrangement here to be made with the town for a fee, providing some maintenance, but a maintenance program which is identical to what is common for the town beaches. I'm just wondering if there's some kind of a tacit agreement here that if the public does sort of migrate onto this property above the high water mark, that there'll be some kind of a tacit acceptance of that, if I phrase it correctly. Am I reading this correct or not?
I don't believe so, and I'm in no position to make any,
I don't think that's really our purview either. I understand where you're going with it.
Because again, with the beach management plan was for public beaches, and I do draw a distinction. And again, when we voted that plan, I said will allow certain maintenance activities on public beach for public benefit, because tourists and the people who use the public beaches like nice, clean beaches and clean sand. But we cannot do that up and down the entire coastline of the town, that is to say, on all of the private areas that are not under town control. Because then you're totally disrupting the natural habitat of a lot of the species we're charged to protect.
Well, I think the public beach management plan tried to address that, and I don't believe our regulations have any distinction between public and private projects that come before us. Our regulations have to be applied equally to the projects that come
Well, when we
before
approved
us.
the beach management plan, Betsy, you may recall that I did make that distinction, and I approved certain activities based upon that distinction.
Well, I do, but I'm just saying, our regulations do not make a provision. You made a distinction basing, you did it based on your judgment. I'm just saying, you can't force an individual to have, we're supposed to make decisions based on the regulations.
All right, let's
And so you
let it
may-
go and continue.
Okay, you may have interpreted something differently than I did, but,
And we can continue to interpret it differently. That's
Yeah.
all right with me.
correct. But there is another point that I want to bring up, and that is, Jen asked that you explain the methodology for alternatives to placing sand. So, from my understanding of what you said, you are either going to replace the sand on the beach by using bobcats through the underground garage, or you'll do a remote system.
Like a conveyor?
Right.
or-
So that's what will be reflected in the order of conditions. Is that okay with everybody? All right, then in that case, do we have enough information to make a decision?
I do.
Okay, then would you like to make a motion, Ed?
I move to close the hearing, take it under advisement.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second on the table to close the hearing and take it under advisement.
Is this the quorum?
Everybody except,
Exclusive of Tom.
yeah. I was going to ask if there are any more questions. There's one question, you might have another. Are there any questions from the audience? Any others? Mike? Okay, motion and a second on the table to close this hearing and take it under advisement. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstention? Unanimous, so moved. Thanks, Mike.
I'm going to recuse myself for the next two, Madam Chair.
Okay.
Do you think that's Tom on this quorum?
On this next quorum, he's recusing himself.
I know, but I don't think he's on the quorum, is he?
Well, he
He
isn't.
recused himself.
No, he recused himself the first time.
Oh, okay.
Where is that? Is this it? Is this it? Tom, Mike, is this it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Tom, Mike, Ed, Betsy, Michelle, Court. All right?
Tom votes?
Yes,
Tom.
Tom.
Yes.
Tommy, it should be.
Tommy.
Yeah.
I'm just reading what was in there.
Okay.
I didn't write it.
Somebody made a
Which,
typographical error here. It's okay.
Well, I'll let you correct it. All right, next one is Anastasios Perifestis, 69 Falmouth Heights Road, Falmouth, for permission to dredge a 9,000 square foot area to a depth of 10 feet by removing approximately 300 cubic yards of material from Falmouth Inner Harbor for the benefit of 65 Falmouth Heights Road. This project includes the harvest and relocation of shellfish from the dredge area, dewatering the material on a barge, deposition into trucks, and transportation to another waterfront location for beach nourishment and to create a coastal dune. Mike?
My name is Michael McGrath. We opened this hearing before, and we continued it so that I could do two things. One was that there was what I described as carryover. We had shown some details, specifically we had labeled something proposed, and there was a building on the plan that doesn't exist. So we have revised the plan to show that instead of a proposed deck, it's a real deck, and then there was a building here that's gone. So the second thing we agreed to do was we've added a detail and an area, and the concept was that when the trucks come in, we wanted to protect the concrete pavers from differential settlement that might be caused by water spilling out of the dredge spoils, even though it's supposed to be dewatered, or just the fact that we would be bringing a lot of heavy equipment in. So what we showed was a cross-section that said that there's rubber mattings or the equivalent. It's laid down on top of filter cloth. So the rubber matting will spread the load out. The filter cloth will keep it so that there are any fines spilled off the truck. And then there are wattles that are shown in case there's any kind of moisture from rainfall or something like that that occurs while the construction is ongoing. Jennifer McKay called me and said I should be prepared to discuss the location of the test that we did. And so I was away and I didn't get that. And so I have brought you a simple sketch. Whoops, that's not simple. Could you just pass those down? I need one. I'm clumsy. And what I've done is we hired a local company that does borings in the water, and we engaged them to do 4 borings, which are shown on this diagram and are shown on the I'm sorry. And the diagram shows the numbers of the tests. If you remember, I described the results of the test was this was all clean sand. So the bottom line is we have shown you that we spread these, the sampling points were spread out. I understand that some of the commissioners are very worried there might be mud here, but the divers said that the bottom was all sandy the whole way and was quote-unquote firm based on the 4 tests that he did. So I believe that I have submitted to you the required areas, the required details, revisions to the plan, and I have further explained where we took the tests to answer a specific question relayed to me by Jennifer. So are there any other questions that I can answer from the commission?
Okay, I have some questions, but we'll go down the board. Ed?
I have no questions.
No question.
Mike?
When we were last talked, I was thinking about coordination of when this material would be used at the next location, whether it would be here. Was there any resolution as to whether it was going to be stockpiled or moved directly?
I'm actually on the other site. We've asked, it looks like because of the time periods, most likely it won't go. And I think what's going to happen is we like to bring this over to 8-Wigwam. In the event we can't, we'll come back for a minute order. Identify a specific site.
Court?
No questions.
Michelle?
I like the construction access detail, thank you for providing that. I would just say that I think the wattles are going to be placed on the pavers, so you might want to make sure that they're compost instead of straw so they don't roll around because you can't stake them in.
I understand.
Okay. That's all.
What's worse is if they're driven over.
Yes, the straw ones in particular get very flattened.
Well, we had a mulch
Just like a
that was
Panama
driven
hat?
over. What a night.
Mike,
Yes.
when were you planning to do this work?
There are so many time restrictions.
Well, the reason I'm asking is, I'm concerned about, now that you've shown where these 4 spots are, these 4 spots are right, as you can see, by the 10-foot contour. I'd like you to take at least 3 more samples right by the bulkhead, because that's where the majority of the volume of the sand you're going to take. I'd like to take some samples, and I'd like to know that they go down at least 4 to 5 feet.
If you remember, we're going to leave there's going to be a triangular cross section. If this is, if this is the bulkhead, there's a triangular cross section between 10 and 8. So if I go next to it, you realize I might be doing
Sampling with-
excavation to a portion of it. If there's any dredging, it's very minimal.
Well, go 4 feet off. But all these samples are taken at right near the 10-foot contour, and I'm not really surprised that it's sandy there. If you expected to see fines, you would expect it to see in the shallower area.
So how many more do you want? Because these satisfy the criteria that's been identified in other agencies. So would you want 3 more?
3 more that are, just a foot or two.
Spaced.
Yeah,
Spaced.
spaced, but not too far from the bulkhead, where you expect that 8 to 10-foot shelf to be.
I prefer to do them from the land because it's very expensive to go back, but it's not so expensive if I can do it from the land, so I'm not exactly sure how far they can reach up. Might be 3 feet.
And how deep a sample can they take?
No, they could probably take 5 or 6 feet easy.
Take a core
Yeah,
and have those analyzed.
okay. I will need another continuance, obviously. So I guess I'd request continuance for a month.
Okay,
Yeah, if I may?
Ed,
I think this request is based on the presumption that you continue to plan to reuse these swells on the beaches in Buzzards Bay. If that's not correct, and there's been some change in your thinking there, then this might not be necessary. It's only because of our...
but I mean, if they're going to use it anywhere, we would want to know. Well,
Well,
whoever got it
sometimes
would
be
want to know.
disposed of in an appropriate place
Right,
for
right.
contaminated materials or something.
Correct.
Then we don't have an issue with it.
What I would say is I can make that decision when I see the results of the corings.
I guess I also have a concern about the lack of a chemical analysis.
The reason that we haven't had to do a chemical analysis is that if you look at the grain size analysis,
It's sand.
there are no fines. If there's no fines, then there is, the fines are where the pollutants become attached. They don't become attached to the sand. I described it before, most likely, most of the pollutants are attached to the organic fines, and there's virtually none. So we're not required to do a chemical test. The chemical tests are rather expensive.
So if you do the sample and you find fines, then you will then
Have to-
have to do
A chemical test.
Yes.
further testing.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's,
that's absolutely true. In that case, I'd come back and ask for another continuance, because most likely I wouldn't be able to get the results of the chemical test done rapidly.
And just one more thing, could a sample of the cores be provided to the commission?
You mean a physical sample?
Yeah, but, yeah, well, yeah.
I don't see
Well, it would
that.
have to be, if it were going to be used somewhere else, it would have to be, because that's a requirement.
That's true.
I've never seen you ask for a real sample before, but
Well, on beach nourishment, we do.
We don't normally reuse sand from Falmouth Harbor.
Mike, you'd like a continuance to May 1st?
yes. Yes.
At the request of the applicant, I move that we continue this hearing to May 1st.
Second.
Okay, any other questions on the board? Any questions from the audience? Okay, hearing none. There's a motion and a second on the table to continue this to May 1st. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous, so moved. Thank you for providing this, Mike.
You're welcome.
Okay, Silvestro Calabrese, 8 Wigwam Road, West Falmouth, for permission to create a coastal dune over an existing stone revetment by establishing a construction access route, placement of approximately 200 cubic yards of sand, and plantings of American beach grass, the placement of an additional 100 cubic yards as beach nourishment, replacement of any disturbed naturally vegetated resource area, buffer resource area, and the associated clearing, grading, and landscaping. Jen, all right, we need a natural heritage letter. Do we have it?
Yes.
Okay, is it in the file?
I don't know. You asked for two things, a copy of the MISA filing, and then a copy of every Google aerial photograph from 2004 to 2012. And we wrote a supplemental request that said that we would like the ability to use other compatible sand in the event that we can't.
Correct, well, this can be
rapidly process.
conditioned.
Yes. So I did give you the copies of the aerial photographs. You said you only needed one or two, and I think I gave you those. But and what I did is I added the baseline to the aerial photographs. I don't know if you want to look at them, or should I discuss what they show?
I would like to look at them. No, you can just put them in the record, but I came in yesterday
But could you tell us
and
what they
didn't find
show,
them.
if you found something?
Sure.
Wait a second, before we get into this, though, I want to go back to the MISA letter.
I
There
have a
was-
MISA letter, and it says that the work on top of the riprap doesn't concern them. But work north of the riprap has to be conditioned to avoid an adverse effect or potential adverse effect on the resource area habitats of state-listed rare and endangered species. So what it says, all work north of the existing riprap, no work shall occur between April 1st and August 31st of any year unless a qualified
Shorebird,
I still stutter, shorebird monitor, as determined by National Heritage, has first surveyed the area no more than 48 hours prior to the start of the work and determined that no state-listed nesting shorebirds are within 100 yards of the proposed work. A written report must be submitted to National Heritage for approval before any work north of the riprap groins may begin.
okay, so that must have come in today. We don't have it in our,
August 3rd,
today's the 3rd.
again? I thought it was the 4th.
Okay. Ed, you'd like to know what happened over the past 10
Yeah,
years?
There's a lot of dynamic changes taking place.
I said.
Now, I also couldn't find those yesterday when I came in to prepare for this. Are they just coming in now?
No, Jeff, an employee of mine assured me it was delivered.
Okay. I just came in to prepare for this yesterday morning, and I didn't see them. But they're here, and you can tell us about them.
My computer put them together in the wrong order.
I'll look at this one.
We'll share it. Tom doesn't even.
On Google Earth, if you know how to use it, and I don't, you can actually toggle, and it'll give you different aerial photographs. And the way that you can tell what the aerial photographs are is there's a thermometer type marker up in the upper left hand. And on top, on mine, I have a 1995 aerial photograph. I think yours might be, the ones that are stapled has 2012. So in 1995, there was a discrete channel. I think you can see that. And the yellow baseline that's shown on the aerial photographs goes from the northwesterly corner of the house on site, and it goes to the southwesterly corner of the most southerly house on the other side of the estuary opening. Then there's a 2001 photograph, and it sort of looks the same. And they more or less look the same, though there is retreat in them. The one that I started becoming familiar with the site about 2003, and what I have done continually is I look upon this line on the ground, this baseline on the ground. And so when my client first started with this, the beach lined up between, almost lined up with the baseline. And so as you move forward, you're beginning to see that there's changes where it's moving back. But the most dramatic change seems to have occurred in 2007, where the mouth of the estuary opened up dramatically.
Well, between 2004 and 2007.
All right.
We don't know when it happened. So maybe it was that 2005, December 2005 storm.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that the 2007 is the first one that shows a dramatic change. And what the most important thing to me was that there is, as I discussed or described, there is rare and endangered species habitat. And that peninsula is moving back kind of dramatically. If you compare 2007 to 2012, you see that there's actually quite a bit of movement back in that area. And so I'm wearing two hats. To me, I would think that you ought to allow my client to put sand on the beach, because I think that that movement back is adverse to the habitat that's there. I think the 2012, this is 2010, and that's a very significant distance compared to what existed prior to 2007. That beach has moved way back. And 2012, I'm sorry, I took mine apart.
We're all out of order.
Yeah, except for the first one.
Resort.
Yeah, I guess they're virtually the same, but it looks worse to me on the ground, to be blunt.
Actually, I think it's fascinating to see the change between 2004 to 2007. I mean, I think it was that one major storm, which is what really rearranges things.
I think I described it before, that I surveyed the Sacanesset Homestead. Betsy may not know where that is, but some of the people that lived here a long time. Across the bike path is an ancient, or one of the most oldest houses in Falmouth, and it was owned by the Gifford family for years. And she had a picture of a sailing ship anchored inside a little harbor here at one time, in the middle of the Great Sipawisset Marsh. So at times, apparently, there's been a big opening there. But when I walk down the bike path, I look across, I get a little nervous, because that mouth opening is much, much bigger now than it has been traditionally. So.
Okay, do we have enough to make a decision? I mean, the source of the sand we can condition, but do we know what the project is? Any other questions?
I move to close the hearing.
Second?
Take it under advisement.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to close this hearing and take it under advisement. Any questions from the audience? Okay, hearing none? Mike. No, not you, this Mike. Mike seconded it. It. Motion is second on the table to close the hearing and take it under advisement. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstention? Unanimous, so moved. Thank you. Welcome again. Tom? Stephen and Deborah Reichhold, 190 Grand Avenue, Falmouth, for permission to demolish the existing 9-bedroom house and to construct a new single-family house with attached garage, porches, stairs, patio wall, sitting area, install a new Title V sewage disposal system, paver and paved driveway, flagpole, 105 linear feet of single-rail cedar fence at the edge of the dune, AC units, outdoor shower, utilities, native tree and shrub plantings, and associated clearing, excavating, grading, and landscaping. Before we begin, Mike, can you tell us the quorum?
Tommy, Ed, Mike, Tom, and Court.
Okay, I had, not Michelle, not me. And I have something to read. Oh, do you have something to read into the record?
No, why don't you go ahead?
All right. But, I mean, I'll just read it into the record because it was asked to be read into the record, but let's start the hearing and then we'll do that. Jeff, good
Okay,
evening.
how you doing? Jeff Ryder with BSS, representing the Reichels tonight. I think you met the rest of the team last time. When we were here last, there was a few questions that came up about buffer, planting, a couple of little minor drafting errors, flood zone location and reference, the curb cut, and perhaps the lot area. But I'm going to go over those quickly. You can kind of follow along. They're listed here in the revisions. A comment was made basically by Jennifer about we were trying to tie this screening into some buffer trees. And she asked that perhaps that would be pruned over time, so we could provide two somewhere else. And so we did that. That's two red cedar trees, by the way, that are over here now at this end against the existing buffer. And then, of course, these areas in darker green are the two proposed buffer areas. So that was one item. We had a drafting error. We did call it Minot Beach. I apologize, but it's Bristol Beach. That's down here. The flood zone. There was a question about the date. And we go to the website when we prepare this little exhibit that's in the notice, and it shows the map, the date of the map, and then the little snippet of the map itself. Anyway, so on note 2 about flood zone, we added that panel. So that's 255211, panel 11F, and it's still dated May 15th, 1986. That's the correct flood map for this area. I believe there was a pamphlet submitted to you by an abutter about the map being the wrong map date, and the 1999 maps were the ones to use. Well, it turns out the 1999 maps are maps that were issued to the town of Bourne in 1999. They're still using those. We don't have a 1999 map in the town of Falmouth. We went through every one, all the amendments to the 86 through Lomers and Lomas. No changes in this area at all. So those are the flood zones shown here with the offsets. The V zone here, and then there's also one here. So it's got the 25-foot setback from both. So no work in those areas, by the way. So the next thing is, I just added I think there was a question about where was a lesion on the map, and so we labeled those two up here, those two roads. The next thing was the curb cut going to be permitted by the DPW? I do have a memo from the DPW.
Yeah, that's in the file.
Oh, it is?
Yep.
Okay. All right, so basically it said it was approved, and we had to add these 5 notes, these call-outs here for that work, basically to abandon this one and to open this using appropriate curbing and ADA standards in the sidewalk. I guess the last one is what I've just talked about earlier was the trees that Teresa moved, or not moved, but added. And we did change the spacing. Since we moved or added 2 more there, we spread these out just a little bit. Okay? I also submitted a letter dated March 27th. I don't know if you saw that one. It does show that exhibit. We talked about the flood zone. Okay, so again, 1986, I explained where we got it, how we got it, how we prepare those. Also, I think there was a question about where did I get the areas for mitigation and for lot area. So I provided these additional exhibits, basically taking an AutoCAD program and kind of whittling it down and then putting that into these exhibits here showing the work in the A and B zones. There's existing proposed. You see that work in the A zone is 610 square feet. Existing is 610 square feet. We matched that. The majority of the work is in the B buffer of expansion of this. And then the exhibits for the existing house area for lot coverage and then proposed. So you'll see that these numbers are in the calculations for mitigation. The first 2 I showed you, and then lot coverage down here. That's not my part. I don't. Teresa, you need to talk? Again, the planting plan remained the same, except for that change in 2 plants. I guess any questions? Any
Okay.
further questions?
Okay, what I'm going to do is, we'll have questions from the people on the quorum, and then I'm going to read, we got a letter that was specifically asked to be read into the record from a consultant,
Okay.
and then we'll see if the audience has any questions.
All right.
So, where should we start? Any questions on the board? Courtney?
In a way, this doesn't directly relate to our regulations, at least on the surface, but being quite familiar with that corner, I'm really concerned that you got a real problem putting that driveway on that curve. It's a blind corner, and, it looks like an accident waiting to happen. And I'm not sure that falls under our regulations, but I'm sure as hell.
It doesn't fall under our regulations. They
Well,
have to
except
get
if
a,
it's an automobile accident and
They have-
nasty things.
they have to
run
get
out
a
of cars
permit,
and-
they have to get a permit from DPW,
Yeah, oh, I know they do.
which
But
they have done.
that's a concern. I mean, having painted the roads for the Cape Cod Marathon on that corner in the traffic, you virtually take your life in your hands every time you do it. That's a concern. I do have concerns about the scope of this project and in general terms, but I'll let the rest of the board deal with that.
Okay, Michelle, do you have any
Not on
further
the quorum.
questions? Oh, not on the quorum. Aren't you lucky? Mike?
I have the information I need.
Okay.
I am on the quorum, and I'm luckily on the quorum.
Okay,
And all the issues that we had asked for were addressed.
okay.
No
Tommy?
questions at the moment.
Ed?
No question.
You also are on the quorum.
Yes, I have no additional questions.
Okay, I'm going to read this, and then we'll see if there are any additional questions about conservation issues from the audience. Dear Chair and Commission members, I am writing to offer my scientific observations and expert opinions for the record regarding the subject NOI to demolish the large historic Bristol House and construct a proposed new, even larger house on this beach lot at 190 Grand Ave. I was contacted by Mr. Lance Cussell, who represents several of his concerned abutters and neighbors last week, and asked to review the NOI-related documents, aerial and ground-based photographs, and the video of the first hearing. I was asked to offer professional opinions on topics related to environmental issues specific to the proposed new house construction on this location in compliance with the Falmouth wetlands regulations. I'm on travel currently and unable to attend the hearing, and therefore ask my report to be read into the record at the upcoming hearing. In particular, I was asked to focus on topics such as the impacts of the new house versus the existing house, that is, larger footprint, elevated pile structure, patio, stone wall, septic system, grass lawn, irrigation system. On the wetland resources, delineation of the dunes, extent of the coastal dune now and in the past, evidence for the growth and migration of the dune, whether or not the natural migration of the dune might be inhibited by current activity or proposed new activity, potential effects on storm surge, flowage, flooding, how climate change effects such as sea level rise and more intense, more damaging storms might affect this very vulnerable, high-risk location in the near future. My time was limited to study the situation, and I did not have access nor opportunity to visit the site this week. But in addition to reading the NOI and all related documents, the new house building plans, and the viewing available historic aerial imagery, I viewed the FCTV video of the initial NOI hearing on 13 March 2013. In addition, I'm very familiar with Bristol Beach stretch of Falmouth coast, its geologic history and evolution, and the coastal processes that act on the beach and dunes. As a professional coastal scientist, I have a 40-plus year career doing research, surveys, and studies of coastal landforms, beaches, dunes, and wetlands, and geologic processes, as well as the assessments of how a warming global climate is impacting and changing our coasts. I've lived in Falmouth for 13 years, served on the Falmouth Conservation Commission for 3 years, served on the board of directors of the 300 Committee Land Trust, and served as vice president of FACES organization. The Falmouth South Coast and Bristol Beach geologically are part of a glacial outwash plain that has been eroded and modified by waves and tidal currents as sea level has risen about 400 feet over the past 20,000 years. The coast is highly dynamic, and sea level has risen about 12 inches in the past 100 years and has increased, I think he means sea level rise has increased 50% in the past 2 decades due to global warming. Prior to the start of coastal development at Falmouth Heights around 1900, the coast here had some sand gravel beaches, much wider and larger than at present, and well-developed vegetated dunes were common to all the beaches. I expect most, if not all, of the 190 Grand Avenue lot was originally covered with mature sand dunes that developed finer grained sand blowing landward from the beach, developed by finer grained sand blowing landward from the beach and held in place by dune grass and other vegetation. The dune grass served to hold the sand in place and stabilize the dune, enabling the dunes to grow in height over the time. As was the common thinking when Bristol House was built in 1927, there was little understanding of coastal processes and appreciation for the value of protecting coastal landforms such as dunes. Often, if dunes grew high enough to block views of the water from the house, the dunes were flattened to reduce height. I surmise that when Bristol House was built, as was common practice at the turn of the 20th century, the dunes were flattened to create a house site and flat yard. Fill, sediment, and topsoil were brought in and spread across the flattened dunes. A grass lawn was then planted. Over the decades, due to progressive armoring of adjacent coastal bluffs that cut off sediment sources to the beach and dunes and storms, erosion became a problem, and the stone groins and the concrete seawall were built at that site. In spite of these actions, apparently, according to the testimony at the hearing and my own inspection of a time series of aerial photographs, dune building processes are still active. The concrete seawall has become covered with sand, and the dune has expanded and grown higher and migrated landward. The sand dunes development has likely been inhibited over the years by the routine maintenance of the lawn, grass cutting, and possible removal of windblown sand as it encroached on the grass lawn. However, in spite of all these activities, this location continues to be a dynamic beach dune ecosystem that affords some storm protection as well as wildlife habitat. Situation could be enhanced, and the beach and dune could afford even more storm protection and habitat value if dune buffer area was expanded, lawn reduced, and footprint of the new house not enlarged. An enhanced beach dune system on this coast would also reduce the progressive effects of climate change, in which sea level is expected to rise 3 to 4 feet by the end of this century, and major storms are likely to increase. Recognizing that the lot located at 190 Grand Avenue was already heavily modified and degraded by flattening of the dunes and filling of the lot, along with the construction of the original Bristol house and lawn, it is clear from the proposed new house plans that in several aspects, the new house will offer some improvements and benefits. For example, the old cesspool will be removed, the house will be elevated a couple of feet on piles, some grass lawn will be removed, and the new house will likely withstand storm effects, that is, winds, surge, flooding, and the waves, better, and thus be less risk in shedding debris that is likely to damage adjacent homes. Acknowledging these improvements, there is, however, some cause for concern about impacts to the wetland resources from the new house plans. These are issues that deserve further consideration and modification to the proposed plans that I feel would facilitate the redevelopment, but also provide more protection to wetland resources. Some of these are as follows. 1, the extent of dunes on the lot and pre-existing dunes under the back and side lawns should be accurately delineated by means of dug pits, maps, photographs, etc. The dune area should be maximized, lawn should be minimized, and sand fencing and planting should be used to encourage dune development and stabilization. 2, the new house has a footprint and total impervious area on the ground far larger than the Bristol house. In sensitive wetland areas of redevelopment, the footprint should be reduced or certainly be no larger. 3, the house is being built on a slab, elevated several feet, and supported by piles to reduce the vulnerability to tidal storm surge, wave action, and sea level rise. This is positive. However, it also increases the possibility that any items stored under the house, as well as any breakaway panels, might dislodge during storms and debris could damage adjacent homes. If panels are used, they should fully comply with FEMA and Falmouth codes, and conditions should be attached to limit storage under the house. 4, lawn and wetland area buffers should be minimal in lot coverage, only native grass should be used, and an elaborate permanent irrigation is not needed to maintain a, quote, Cape Cod lawn, unquote. Also, lawn fertilization should be minimal to reduce nitrogen runoff and infiltration. 5, stone walls and impervious patios should be minimized. 6, installation of a septic system is an improvement over the old cesspool, but nitrogen pollution of Little Pond and nearshore water bodies is already a serious problem, and a Title V system will do nothing to mitigate this issue here. Additionally, the water table is at a high elevation, and I wonder how effective such a system will be in treating and discharging effluent. A denitrifying treatment system should be considered. 7, citations were apparently incomplete. I think you've corrected these, Jeff. On the NOI plan is discussed on the 13 March hearing. The dates of the FEMA firm maps need to be confirmed, and boundary delineations and placement of various zones need to be confirmed on the plans. Thank you for your attention in considering my comments and recommendations. I hope you will agree that in some cases additional information is needed to fully delineate the resources, and that the proposed plans need to be modified to minimize impacts to resources. I'm on travel at present and unable to attend the hearing, but welcome questions and need for additional detail by email or phone. I'll return on April 5th. Jeff Williams, S. Jeffress Williams, Consulting Coastal Geologist, 24 Alder Lane, North Falmouth.
I just have a couple of comments.
Yep.
Reading that or hearing that. Well, the proposed house is your typical foundation wall within a flood zone, meaning if there's a slab at grade and there's walls a couple of feet above grade, if you notice in the architecturals we gave you, so there's no piles, so there's no panels, there's no kayaks or canoes stored underneath. It's a crawl space of about 2.5 to 3 feet. So the elevation, I mentioned before, goes from 12.5, to 14.37. we're raising it up a couple feet as required by the building code.
But it's going to be built according to building code, a
Yeah,
flood
so
zone
it's gonna have,
standards.
Flood zone, panels that turn in, or flood vents, as they call it, in the foundation. So I think that the letter suggests that we're talking about an elevated structure on pilings, but that's not the case.
I'm just reading what's in the letter.
Another thing about the dune edge, we delineated it for today. Maybe the dune was here once, the cape's getting smaller, we know that. So the dunes are gonna creep in over time, but today, that's where the dune is. Pretty, if you walk it, you can see a lawn, and then there's dune grass. And perhaps there was more dune on this before ever built on it, but that's how it is today.
Okay, thanks,
Right.
Jeff. Are there any
And then
questions?
Just one more thing about Title V system. We're going from a 9-bedroom to a 6-bedroom house. This is a 6-bedroom system. All right, that's all.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. Ed, do you have any other questions?
No, I think if there's some issues raised in the submission that you just read, there are some things we can discuss when we deliberate and make our decision.
Okay, and this is in the, we all received this by email, and it's also in the file. It should be in the file. There's a copy of the file. Yes. Bob, good evening.
Hi, Madam Chair, members of the board. I'm Bob Ament, and I am an attorney, and I represent the applicant along with Jeff Ryther. And Jeff is a soft-spoken person, and I want to emphasize what he said softly, but in a lot of words, that the plans that he had presented at the original meeting were in fact accurate as to the delineation of resource areas, as to the location of the flood zone, as to the calculations shown on the plan regarding lot coverage and mitigation requirements. The only error in the plan was the reference to the name of, I think it was Manon Beach, and he had a different name of the beach.
Instead of Bristol.
That was it. The reference, as Jeff said, to the flood zone had to do with a document from the town of Bourne that doesn't even apply in Falmouth. Now, I'd like to point out a couple of things. There's been references to the size of the house, and while I think that has really almost nothing to do with the Conservation Commission deliberations, much has been made of it, and there's references to the house and what's to exist today and what's to be placed there in Mr. Williams's letter. So I'm going to take just a couple of minutes to point out a couple of things. First of all, the house is repeatedly referred to as historic. So, just for the record, I'm going to give you a copy of the certified statement from the Falmouth Town Clerk that this house is not even listed on the Falmouth list of significant buildings, that is, historic buildings in the town of Falmouth. I'm sure you've all been to the site and walked around the house, and what I'm sure you've also noted is that the house is really worn out. And as stated at the last hearing, this house is beyond being renovated. It needs to be replaced, and that's substantial improvement, and the house has to be elevated. And the house will be 2 feet higher to the ridge, but that's the height that the house is going to be increased due to compliance with the flood zone. Actually, because it's in an A zone, not a V zone, and Mr. Williams seems to confuse that throughout his letter, talking about V zone requirements and concern about panels and the like. But our regulations our wetland regulations only require 1 feet on top above the flood elevation, which is 12. That would make it elevation 13, and the elevation 14.37 is really an extra measure of safety. It's a wise thing to do, I'm sure, but it is a response to flood zone concerns. Also, regarding the size of the house, which we already said it's a reduction from 9 bedrooms to 6 bedrooms. It's a large house, and it's larger than what's there now, perhaps, though some of it is actually outside 100 feet from the dune, a good portion of it. I also want to show you this plan. And in the yellow on this plan, I've indicated all of the open area. These are patio areas that have been included in the calculation of structure. It's not clear that they had to be, but they were. And they also include the porch areas and deck areas. It's really a significant portion of the house. The house itself is not that much bigger. And almost none of these first floor area patios, decks, and porches have any living space above them. It may be the answer that none of them have any, but if there is any, it's very, very small. I want you to take that into account. That's a significant portion of it, and all of this development is on existing lawn or existing impervious areas. The existing driveway, as shown on the plan, runs to here, and this area, and this side of the house is all pavement as well. So I want you to take that into account when you think about the concern about how big this house is going to be. Now, how big the house is going to be isn't a factor in your regulations. In your regulations, you have to meet the regulations. But if you meet the regulations, as you know, the project should be approved. And so what you want to look at is the total increase in impervious area. And there is no increase in impervious area in the velocity zone. And the total increase in impervious area in the A buffer zone is only, I think it's about 657 feet. And for which there's 2-to-1 mitigation provided. That's in the, of course, in the A zone closest to the dune. Now, I really found it interesting, and it's really a fascinating concept, that Mr. Williams talks about pre-existing dunes. There's no term pre-existing dunes in the Falmouth Wetlands regulations. There's a definition of dunes. And the definition of dunes means a natural hill, mound, or ridge of sediment. There is no definition about pre-existing dunes. So at one point he talks about original conditions, and I'm wondering what he's talking about. Is he talking about 90 years ago, just before the house was built? Or 500 years ago? Or 10,000 years ago? See, if we get into what the original conditions were of property to then determine what we have to comply with today, we have a huge problem, and we don't do that. It isn't relevant whether there was dune on the lot 100 years ago. It may be relevant whether there was dune on the lot when the wetland regulations went into effect in the 1970s. But there is no dune that is being impacted by this project. If anything, the dune is being better protected. So Mr. Jeffries talked about reviewing documents, and he talks about he's reviewed it on a scientific, get his wording right. He's been offering scientific observations. Well, he hasn't gone to the site. And he also says he's going to discuss compliance with the regulations. He does not cite, refer to any regulation in his lengthy letter. He suggests, he talks about the house being much bigger and a bigger footprint, but in fact we meet the regulations of the bylaw. And except for flood zone, a good portion of the house is outside jurisdiction. We've already discussed the fact that his concerns, many of his concerns about the construction would have to do with flood zone construction, and he just didn't understand really what the project is. He says that lawn and wetland buffer areas should be minimal in lot coverage. It sounds like a good goal, but there is no limitation on lawn in the B zone, and we have existing A zone, and we're reducing the total amount of lawn on the lot, and we're providing mitigation for the increase in impervious structure. In other words, we're complying with the regulations. He says stone walls and impervious patios should be minimized. It's the same answer. We're complying with the regulations and providing mitigation that is twice the amount of increase in impervious area. He talks about the septic system. We've already said the number of bedrooms is being reduced from 9 to 6. The present house has a cesspool between the house and the dune. And we're going to put in a Title V septic system that is outside any resource area buffer. It is within in the A zone where it's allowed. Again, we're meeting the regulations. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Barbara? Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Barbara Frappier, and I had met Mr. Cussell a little while back, and I reviewed the hearing and watched it on TV. And there was one aspect of it that is not unique to this project, but is something that is a pet peeve of mine that many of you will understand. And one of them is the septic system. I feel that it's been presented to you that we're going from a 9-bedroom house to a 6-bedroom house. And I think that's sort of disingenuous because, in fact, this is a 13-room house. And Title V gives a definition of what is a bedroom. And in looking at the architecturals which came in last week, it appeared to me that there are at least 8 Title V bedrooms, if not more, but at least 8. So, in fact, there are more bedrooms in this house than 6. However, Title V does provide with the ability to do what's called room averaging, which is a legitimate way to get around building a septic system that would be properly sized for a particular number of bedrooms. They let you add up all the rooms in the house, divide it by 2, and then round down. So if you look at Mr. Ryther's plans, he does show that he has room averaged, so that this is not a 6-bedroom system based on only 6 bedrooms in this house. I find that particularly of particular concern to me because of the site, its proximity to the shoreline, and right now, and for quite some time, many years, Falmouth is sort of tying itself up like a pretzel, trying to do something about cutting back, eliminating, and preventing nitrogen pollution in the coastal waters. And you've got a very serious area right there with Little Bay. To have a septic system here that is undersized for the maximum potential usage of this dwelling doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me. It is within the guidelines of Title V, but we have environmental issues here that are unique to this lot and similar lots. And it would seem to me that the system should either be properly sized, if it's going to be a straight Title V, for potential maximum use of this house. The family that's going to use this house may only have 4 people in it, and maybe there's only 4 people there. But if, again, you look at the architecturals, 2 of the designated rooms that are designated as sleeping areas are called bunk rooms. Girls' bunk room and the boys' bunk room, and they're showing 5 beds in there. Well, Title V wants you to think that for every bedroom, there's only 2 people with a total effluent of 110 gallons per day. So the potential for this house to contribute to this system significantly more than what the system is designed to handle is very real. Maybe not for this family, but perhaps for future owners. So I have had projects where we are compliant, we're outside the 100-foot buffer, I don't need any issues from Board of Health. But recently was asked by the Coastal Ponds Advisory Committee, is that through this board, if my client would consider denitrification. So what I'm suggesting is, although many times...
Excuse me, Barbara, gentlemen.
Many times this board has said to me, this is not in our purview. And my argument always has been, yes, it is. The Wetlands Protection Act, the Falmouth Wetlands Bylaw, and all the regulations charge you with protecting certain interests of the act. And those interests include protection of groundwater, protection of public and private drinking supply, prevention of pollution, and protection of fisheries and shell fisheries. So I think it is most definitely within your purview. So inasmuch as technically, mechanically, design-wise, this system meets Title V, but from an environmental perspective, it seems inadequate for this site, and it probably should be upgraded to a D-Nite at the very least. And if any of the information that's before you results in your considering that that coastal dune is more landward than what is shown here on this plan, then that makes the issue all the more urgent. And that's all I wanted to add.
Thanks, Barbara. Do you have a question? Question?
Barbara.
Barbara?
Yes.
Do you have any data or reason to suspect that groundwater flow is not toward the bay, but in fact is toward the pond?
I have no, there is a report out that I'm not privy to. I don't have it in front of me, you may have it, that was done relative to that pond, very featured on the pond. Mr. Cussell, I believe, has submitted that report. The Coastal Resources Working Committee, and may actually address that aspect of it. But I'm speaking to this project, but I don't know which way it goes.
On the down gradient side of the pond.
I do not know the hydrology.
You came as an expert, as an engineer. Do you believe?
I'm not an engineer, and I didn't come as an expert. This is a pet peeve of mine that has gone on over the years. I'm just telling you that in my experience in dealing with what the commission looks for.
If there is reason to believe that that system is up gradient of the pond, I have a whole different set of concerns than I do when it's not up gradient of the concern. And if you look at the setting, I have no reason to believe the discharge would go to the pond.
Well, it may go to the shore.
It does.
It may
I'm
go
sure it
directly
does.
into the groundwater.
I'm sure it goes to the groundwater.
Exactly.
And the point is it goes to the bay, which is not the pond, which is distressed in.
But we have shell fishery and fisheries, whether they're
Okay,
distressed or
all right,
not.
that's fine.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have another question?
I've had a chance to study the plans, and following to your point, I mean, I'm unsure how to interpret this from the standpoint of conventional view of bedrooms. But if I look at the drawings on drawing A2, there's a master bedroom which has a double bed in it. There's a guest suite that has a double bed in it. And there is another guest suite that has a double bed in it. And then there's another guest suite that has a double bed in it. So that's like essentially what I think most interpretations of bedrooms are, that you've got 2 occupants per bedroom. So for those 4 bedrooms out of the 6, you have 2 occupants per bedroom. Then there's a girls' bunk room, and it shows 5 bunks. And then you go to the 3rd floor, and you have a boys' bunk room that shows 5 or 4 bunks.
You know where I'm going to go next? I'm going to ask you if there's a question.
So the
Do you have
question is...
do you have the information you need to make a decision? I'm
No,
I'm
as a
I'm
matter of fact,
I'm not
I would
closing.
like to know
I'm not
more
closing
about
off.
how this impacts the flow rate
for a septic design.
Well, then ask her that question.
I am.
Then you need to
Or
ask
I'll
the engineer, I'm
direct
not
it
the
to
engineer, and,
applicant.
all right.
Thank you, Barbara. Stand by, you might be called upon again. Jeff?
Just a response on the bedroom count. There are 6 actual bedrooms that are labeled bedrooms. But Title V also says that when a dwelling has more than 8 rooms, and it says when, it doesn't say if or whatever. So I'm required to count all the rooms.
And divide by 2
divide in
and
half,
go down
round
1.
down. That's the way you do it. You know,
Okay,
I
that's,
can't help if somebody doesn't like that calculation, but that's what I'm
okay, that's the
I'm
information.
required to do it that way.
Okay.
And, you know, the architecture depicts, you know, possible places for rooms, but it doesn't mean that, or beds, doesn't mean that you're going to actually put 5 beds in
No,
there.
no,
But maybe that's gonna happen,
understood.
But
You
basically,
hear my
Title V
concern.
says that, you know, you're going to have 2 people per bedroom per day. You know, and that would mean 12 people in this house, and that's probably about right during the summer, with everybody there, extended family. And then the system, you know, the system is designed for that, so,
Okay, the relevant thing is, do you have the information you need?
that's all.
You could, this is something that, when it's time to vote, you can discuss. I just want to make sure you have the relevant information. Bob? You guys call me if you have a question.
On this issue, once again, you would want to turn to the regulations that you've adopted and that you have to make your decisions under. And on any appeal, you'd have to justify a decision based on your regulations. FWR 10.03 3B1 is labeled presumptions concerning septic systems, and it reads, a septic system is presumed to protect the resource area values protected by the bylaw when it is sited according to the provisions of FWR 10.033C, which requires a 100-foot setback from the resource area, which this meets, and otherwise meets the provisions of Title V and the Board of Health regulations. This proposed septic system meets your requirements and the state and local Title V regulations. I'm sure that Barbara Frappier is not intending to suggest that there isn't a significant improvement replacing the existing cesspools for the 9-bedroom house, including the cesspool that's just off the dune, with this Title V system that is properly cited. There may be an occasion when there's a sorority party or a reunion or who knows what, and maybe on road race weekend, when there'll be a lot of people in the house. But Title V recognizes that every room that can be used as a bedroom is not counted for determining compliance with Title V and the required capacity of the system. And Jeff Ryther is correct that this is a 6-bedroom house. We're not limited on this plan by the resource areas nor the zoning or Board of Health Title V setback requirements. One could even have a larger system, but it isn't necessary. It isn't necessary under the law, and we're not offering that. This system is the right size for the proposed house, which actually has a reduction in bedrooms.
Thank you, Bob. Any other questions? Sir?
Good evening. Good to see everyone again. I'm Lance Cussell from 189 Grand Avenue. I live directly across the street from the proposal. And I represent several of the abutters and neighbors in the neighborhood, and in my comments tonight, instead of having 10 people come up, we thought we'd consolidate in consideration of time and space. I have a couple submissions for the board. I want to make sure that you got them. Perhaps you already have, but we have another comment from a coastal geologist named Trey Ruthbeck. Did those reach you today?
I don't know, I'm on the quorum, so I didn't.
Okay, that's it. So for your convenience.
Did you get them, Ed? Did you get them?
I haven't seen it, no.
Oh,
They're very brief, so. I'm sure the
just for the record.
council would like to comment.
Thanks very much.
Absolutely.
Oh.
And we, Barbara referenced the Coastal Resource Working Group paper from 2003. I submitted that to Concom several days ago, maybe over a week ago. Did those reach you? I'll be happy to hand it out. Just one page. Thank you.
When, just for information for the audience and such, when information is given to the staff or submitted through the office, most of us get our material for next week tonight. So if something's handed in, we don't make multiple trips to the office to pick up certain things. So it's not like we're avoiding anything, it's just a lot of us don't go down there every day.
Ed, did you get this one?
Pictures were sent in also, some time series that I'm going to present. Those should have made it into your packets, I don't know, but as a courtesy, we just made copies so you could see them again.
Thank you.
Okay. Some reference was made, or a question was asked by Commission member Mr. Byrd, Commissioner Byrd, about just how dynamic this lot is, this area is. And I think that the focus of our remarks today really are on that remark, and to try to bring some science and some expertise to our initial concerns that, believe me, are heartfelt and quite intuitive. But for our purposes here, we need to rely on science to intersect with the governing regulations to the degree possible. So we're trying to bring some additional information that's pertinent to your purview. These are some photographs that were referenced by Mr. Donlin at the last session. These are family photographs on the beach in front of the Bristol House, no longer the historic Bristol House, we'll just call it the Bristol House. And you can see here that the seawall that's depicted in the BSS plan is clearly visible. There's a good 3 or 4 foot drop here in 1962, okay? And that's the front of the house from that perspective. Just wanted to show that to you. I can hand them around if you need them.
You'll have to leave. Did you submit those?
Those have been submitted.
All right. Thank you.
Here's a 1995 photograph from the same family album, and you can see that there's almost zero space between the sand line and the top of that wall, and now the dune growth has begun. This is the same perspective as before. So in just that 30-year period or so, you can see it, the sand and beach and dune situation has become dynamic and moving towards the home. Now, in time series photography that's readily available on the Falmouth, Mass website, these are the GIS photos. In 1975, you can see an image of the lot here where the dune is barely visible. It just begins here in the corner, and the seawall is still holding up pretty well. Sorry for the resolution, but these are commonly available to everybody on your desktop, and you can certainly review them again on your own. In 1986, you can see it's starting to get a little larger here, the dune area, and the lawn area is becoming reduced. By 1991, it's almost indiscernible here where that seawall line existed. It's been overcome by the dune, and there's quite a bit of sand shifting toward the home, as evidenced by that whiteout area here. Now today, we've just blown up a photograph that I have copies of. I think I already handed them out. This is just some perspectives from the beach line of what the house appears to be as of last week, or March 16th rather. And you can see that just the common naked eye, the house is quite proximate to a dune, and the foreground here is completely dune grass, and this is dead dune grass because it's March and it's the off season. But obviously in the summertime it's green and billowing and quite thick, as the engineer has noted aptly and accurately. This is what you have today right now. It appears by the naked eye that the home is basically on top of the dune, but that can be a bit deceiving, these perspectives, and we wouldn't want to deceive anybody. In fact, we hope and expect that you have an opportunity, each commissioner, to walk this property, as it is such a sensitive parcel of land. Has everyone had a chance to do that?
Yes.
Excellent, excellent. This is our neighborhood after all. This is where we live. This is my house right here. This is Lynn Smith Brown's house right here, and so forth. This is an image from about a year ago. This is what you get when you type 190 Grand Avenue into Google Images now, and you get a street view or an aerial view. And you can see here just how far the sand has migrated. It's almost half again the distance closer to the patio's edge, as is depicted here in the engineer's plan. The engineer's plan, which you all have, depicts a dune line that roughly corresponds with this picture to be here. So the dune line as depicted does not account for the sand migration. Now, whether that sand was cleaned off in the last year and the engineer simply didn't encounter it, or what happens on this property is unknown to us. We don't spy on our neighbors. However, this is what happens here in terms of dynamism. And you can see the outline of the dune and just the white shading of the lawn area, which depicts a lot of sand moving in that direction. And as has been referenced in the last meeting, there's mowing and maintenance going on here, and that's what's holding back the landward movement of this dune. There's no question about it, and I don't think anyone's arguing that. In fact, the proposal had called for, and continues to call for, 105 feet of single rail fence to protect the dune from mowers. Well, that might be the intention of the plan, but what it does in effect provide a practical mowing limit that will continue to perennially hold back that dune from moving forward. So in other words, you might protect the dune that's here from mowing, but what about that keeps coming through year by year? If you're setting up a practical limit with a fence here, it's going to continue to be mowed right up to that fence unless the plan calls for yearly remeasurement of the dune and moving of the fence, all 105 linear feet of it. I don't think so. So what all of this discussion is getting to is the point that this is a very dynamic area. And in fact, the experts that we've had a chance to so far discuss the plans with believe that this indeed was all a dune, if not substantially. The whole lot was flat at one time to build a house and to plant a lawn. This was commonly done 100 years ago. We understand that. Now, the attorney for the project asked, why is that relevant? Well, the mandate of the commission is to conserve the environment, take into account the latest science and understanding of coastal processes that we've been able to develop in the last 100 years, apply them to the best of our human capabilities, and not ignore the fact that this was a dune, it never should have been tampered with. Okay, there's a pre-existing building on it. We respect property rights. It's grandfathered in, I guess, to some extent. If they want to fix it up and renovate it. If you have to renovate it substantially, it has to be lifted up, brought up to code. We heard all of that, understand it. Nobody's quarreling with that from the neighborhood. But we are begging the question and asking the question, if this was a dune, house was constructed, we know that it was a dune or suspect that it is and can take steps to prove it. Of course, we haven't had permission yet to go onto this property. Our experts respect the private property, haven't had a chance to get on there yet. But it's really the commission and the applicants approved to us that this is not a dune underneath, and this is not a dynamic area that's encroaching that's actually been artificially delimited by mowing. In fact, the dune could be coming right up to where the structure is, and in that case, the FWR regs do, in fact, bear on this project. While it might be compliant with zoning regulations, we're talking about the purview of this commission, the regulations. And Mr. Williams is a smart man, and I'm sure very well respected by his former colleagues on the commission. He didn't feel like he needed to spoon feed you the regulations that you live and breathe with weekly. You operate under their provisos. You don't need to be hectored with citations. He knows that you understand the regulations that are pertinent here. But just for the benefit of the audience, FWR 10.04 says that if there's erosion, prevention of damage to structures and natural resources as a result of erosion means preventing any activity or the construction, improvement, or repair of any structure that inhibits or otherwise restricts beach, barrier beach, or dune movement. Good to take into account. The regulations from 10.28 having to do with coastal dunes. When a coastal dune is significant to storm damage prevention, flood control, or the protection of wildlife habitat, the following characteristics are critical to the protection of those interests, and that's citation 10.28, section 2, subsection 4. Landward movement. On retreating shorelines, coastal dunes bordering the coastal beach move landward with the rest of the shoreline. This allows coastal dunes to maintain their form and volume. If the dune did not build landward, the dune would gradually be eroded away from the seaward side, and the dune would become smaller and smaller, and therefore would be more likely to be completely washed away in a coastal storm. Now, intuitively, we all understand that as people who use this land daily and have grown up there. Mrs. Papazian expressed her concerns for the dune. Mr. Schmidt assured her that if today a proposal were being made to alter the dune substantially as it exists, it wouldn't be approved likely. Well, this whole project, if this was an empty lot, it would be highly likely that it could not get approved today. So therefore, do we compound the original sin of flattening that dune 90 years ago, clearing that land now, filling in the land with fill for the basement, and then build an even larger structure? That is the central question that the abutters and neighborhood have in their hearts. Do we allow a new structure even larger on this sensitive site that we believe to have been a dune substantially prior to its construction in 1927? So you're scourging the earth twice here in this very sensitive area if this goes through as proposed. Isn't this the mandate, the role of the Conservation Commission to make sure that that what we know today is brought to the fore scientifically and practically. We thank Mr. Ryther for clearing up any possible concerns with the original plan. Thank you for assuring us that your calculations are correct and the maps that you've used are the correct ones. And thank you for going back and doing that. We can tell you that the maps may not have changed since 1985 or 86, but this site sure has. And and I thank Mr. Ryther further for his candor in the last session at the 1 hour and 28-minute mark when asked by Mr. Byrd, Commissioner Byrd, whether the dune was dynamic, was it moving. He quite candidly offered that he didn't go looking to see if the whole backyard is dune. I'm quoting verbatim. Before there was a single house out there, there was probably a lot of sand here before. So you may have some man-altered dunes that's been replanted and turned into lawn for decades. I guess maybe the lawn did come down to the wall at one time, but currently the dune is here, as depicted on the plan. So here we are. We're in
Well,
a
sir,
dynamic
do
situation.
you have any further information? I think the board probably has the information they need to make a decision. Do you have any further information to add?
I have one other set of concerns based on the regs I just wanted to mention briefly, having to do with flooding. This is constructed in the A flood zone, and we're concerned that the plan has not satisfied considerations of changing the storm flowage, the velocities, the directions, the presumptions in FWR 10.38, where a project involves a removing, dredging, filling, building upon, degrading, or otherwise altering of land subject to coastal flowage. The commission shall presume that said area is significant to, and so forth. So it has to do with the safety of our other properties in case of a flood, and I don't think that we've been satisfied scientifically what the impact of this new building, which we have depicted here, this has been handed out as well. This is the superimposition of the new building over the old building, much larger footprint, different massing and geometry on the site. What happens with storm flowage coming through and affecting Grand Avenue, the other neighborhoods, the basements of the butters and so forth? It's all a mystery, but in the case of a plan like this, it's really the onus of the applicant to show us what's going to happen, to assure us from an engineering point of view that there will be no impacts adverse to the neighborhood. And size does matter because of this and other concerns. We feel that, in summation, that this lot probably is a dune, and should it be subject to clearing, a full raising of the existing building, and then a footprint that even expands further, we think as a neighborhood that that is ill-advised and not in harmony with the FWR regulations in the town of Falmouth. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions on the board? Bob, would you like to respond to that?
Just a couple of words in response. Blown sand does not constitute a dune. The blown sand does not constitute a mound, a ridge, or a hill. But even getting beyond that, the question really has to be, we have an existing conditions. We have an existing lawn that is being maintained and being maintained lawfully. The question is, what impact does the proposed house, which has a larger footprint, have on the dune? The house is not moving any closer to the dune. despite the concern that's been raised, there's been no evidence presented as to how this really has any impact. The house will be larger, heading away outside the 50-foot from the coastal bank. None of us imagine that if the existing house is left as it is, there will be any requirement to allow the dune to come up against the existing house, and that it will then be in the dune. That is not going to happen. It's not required that that be allowed to happen. So you have to start with the existing conditions, and you have to ask if the improvements that are being proposed on the lot are outweighed, and it's not even close in this case, by some harm to the dune, and there is no harm to the dune being made here. With respect to the flood zone issue last raised by Mr. Cussell, again, we are in an A zone, and the impact on flooding in the neighborhood or in the area due to this house construction is so small as to be incapable of measurement. Now, I'm not an expert on this. This is what I am confident that a professional engineer would say, that the volume of additional structure on this lot, when measured by the entire floodplain within the A zone in this area where the waters will be dispersed, is so small as to be beyond measurement. Thanks.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Andy Bennett. I live at, well, I don't live there year-round, but I own the house at 196 Grand Avenue, which is kind of diagonally across Grand Avenue from that house. I'm not really sure what the question I really have, but it was just a little comment. When they're talking about the septic system and the number of bedrooms, I've been in that area for 30 years now, a little over 30 years, and I've seen a lot of changes in 30 years. And there's considerable change there right now if you've been down Dartmouth Ave and Grand Ave. But what I've noticed is these houses, the bigger, the fancier they get, the less people they have in them. So whatever the septic system is rated for as far as bedrooms, I was just wondering, and as professionals here, there's probably really no need for an answer to it, but is those figures based on the system being used every day? Right now, there's a house directly across the street adjacent to this house that was renovated 4 or 5 years ago, then renovated again when it was sold 2 years ago. There hasn't been anybody there since July 4th. So, you know, the system doesn't even get used. You know, this house here, they've owned the property for a few years. You know, they might, if you added up the number of days they're there in the total year, they're there 30 days, maybe. I kind of like it because there's not anybody around, but I'm just wondering if that, and when you think about the systems and whatever, is there really a need to denitrate, all of that for the amount of use that it actually gets? Thank you.
Okay, that's an interesting comment. But, okay, remember, we're at the point now where
I mean, that was
we,
just a...
that was a comment.
Oh,
That was an interesting comment, though. I mean, it might not be directly applicable to the decision we have to make, but
Having to do with a submission to the board from last week that I submitted. It's the Coastal Resources Working Group paper from 2003.
right, that's in here.
That really discusses the South Shore of Falmouth and this area very well. And I'd just like to, for the record, cite on page 14, section 17E, the recommendation for the near term that was issued in 2003 by some of the finest science minds in the Falmouth area who worked collaboratively to volunteer for a blueprint for Falmouth Seashore's future. This was submitted over 10 years ago now. This is a near-term recommendation, 0 to 5 years, meant to be implemented within the near term. For reconstruction in V and A flood zones that are sediment sources, coastal beaches, coastal dunes or eroding coastal banks, prohibit expansion of building footprint area, and require elevation of the first floor above the 100-year storm wave base, and prohibit breakaway panels. One of the co-chairs of this effort is here with us, Dr. Jude Wilbur, in the audience, who's taking a keen interest in a project that, yes, appears in the same neighborhood as this report speaks to. And he feels very strongly that this site was indeed a dune at one time, and there's a lot of dynamic coastal processes and sediment migration processes going on in this lot, and it should be considered a very, very sensitive area. If Dr. Wilbur wants to elaborate on that, I invite him to do so.
Good evening, Jude. If you do want to elaborate, please make it very brief. If there's any additional information.
I've been abroad working in the Caribbean, and I've just come up to speed on this. I actually have been out there. I can delineate exactly where the dune is and exactly where upland is, and I've done so by taking a few samples. I'm not at the point. I am neither an advocate nor talking against this plan. I'm just merely an observer tonight, trying to get up to speed. I have a concern because the Coastal Working Group plan submitted the report. The initial report was on South Shore in 2003. The final report on Buzzards Bay was in 2010. It was a 10-year effort with tens of thousands of hours involved in that. The document remains unique in all the United States. It is the only such document that speaks directly to both the past and the future choices that the town has to make. The document is scheduled to become the coastal management part of the long-range plan. And I will be making a presentation at November town meeting with that article on the table. So this is just my interest in this. I live in Hatchville now, so I don't see the beach as much as I used to. But it is, I think, important for the board to realize that you really can't make decisions living in the past anymore when there's a lot of new scientific information on the board, down to the details of lots that have been presented. That when you fail to recognize that the coastal system, number one word is mobility. That's the number one word for a coastal system like ours, or Martha's Vineyard. Falmouth has completely eliminated the mobility of the South Shore and the Buzzards Bay shore. And I'm currently writing a book about that and comparing it to what the Conservation Commission does on Martha's Vineyard. And a superstorm like Sandy that might drift a little farther north than New York City is going to annihilate the shoreline of Falmouth, and there's going to not be enough money to rebuild it. That same superstorm will hit Martha's Vineyard and nothing will happen. There will be nothing but beaches and better beaches. I don't know why this is so hard for people to comprehend. It's been a personal frustration of mine for over 20 years. It's not rocket science, and quite frankly, I'm oftentimes embarrassed to present myself as a scientist in the field of coastal sedimentology. It's a matter of, are you smarter than a fifth grader, to put it bluntly. And the answer to date is most Falmouthites aren't smarter than fifth graders. They continue to put their head in the sand, what little is left. In the past 10 years, one of the most commonly asked questions I get is, where went Woodneck? Where went Woodneck?
you know, that was the premier beach on the Buzzards Bay side. Now what do we got? Nothing. It's never gonna come back.
Jude, could you circle back to this project?
Hey, I'm circling back to this project because there are situations involved in this project that speak.
Yeah, could you specifically give the board,
No, I'm not going
any-
to give the board that because, like I say, I have no standing here tonight. I'm not neither a paid consultant. I am a person of interest. I have an interest in this. Basically, I'm here.
well,
to
this is a
speak-
hearing on this particular project to find out information that the people on this board need to make a decision on the project. So
well,
I'd like
I
to
assume
either
that
to
you're-
address this project,
I assume that your hearing will be held open for written comment.
No,
no?
tonight's
this-
the, Madam Chair, if I may, Betsy was not the chairperson at the last hearing.
Okay.
It got a continuance, and at that point in time, the engineer, the applicant, got all the questions asked of him, and was admittedly done his homework, and submitted everything that was asked for. I, for one, it's always a pleasure to see you, Jude. You know that.
I like this.
Yeah, thank you. But I am not in favor, I'm not going to continue this tonight, I'm going to close this tonight. In fact, I'm putting a motion on the table to close this hearing and take it under advisement.
Well, then that will be all I have to say.
You know, but that doesn't close the public comment. I just want to move this along, because there's
There's no public comment right now. There will be no further extension of this for written comment.
Well, it depends on whether the hearing's closed or not.
No, that's up to
Okay, there's a motion on the table
I'll
to
second
close
that.
this hearing and take it under advisement, and a second.
Okay.
Are there any further comments?
Yes. As I was the chair on the original hearing, just a couple things that I kept writing down. I don't mind if you call that the historic house. My granddaughter thinks I live in a historic house.
You're not going to go on too much either.
No, I'm not, but I've been quiet. And I've been listening to very passionate people on both sides give a lot of information. What I wanted to do was compliment both sides for being so dedicated to supplying good information for the board to review. The submissions are in the file. When we go into our deliberations, we have a plethora of good information on both sides. That's what my comment was going to be. There is very tangible, very compelling things that have been said. So that is what, when we're deliberating, is going to be chosen to review. And that's it.
Okay. Ed, Tom, any further comments?
I think we have a lot of information.
Okay. Mike, Courtney? Okay, the motion is second on the table to close this hearing and take it under advisement. Is there any further comment from the audience? Okay, hearing none, we'll take the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstention? Unanimous, so moved. Thank you, everyone. We still have more business tonight, so could I ask, especially those of you who would like to discuss things from the hearing, to just go around the corner. Thank you.
Madam Chair, can we take a 5-minute recess?
Okay, and we'll take a 5-minute recess. We'll begin again at 20 after. I think you need to make a motion.
Motion to recess for 5
Motion.
minutes.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye. My granddaughter loves it. She calls it my Harley hair.
Yeah.
This gentleman is one of the most knowledgeable men in the world about our resources.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the book.
I have to just talk to you about that.
What's even
Just
better
to
than the
May
book is
2nd?
that
back in session. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Unanimous, so moved. So there's a little surprise that those of you who just have an agenda in front of you and who did not read what this agenda was going to be, and that's request to extend the existing order of conditions, Linda Spence, 97 Old Dock Road, West Falmouth, for permission to extend the existing order of conditions, DEP number 253686.
Madam Chair.
There's no need to take action because it's subject to Permit Extension Act. So this permit doesn't extend to 2017. So we don't have to do anything.
Excellent.
So we're moving right on.
I like it.
Thank you, Mike. Vote orders of conditions. Gansett Trust trustees, care of Jim Ware, Lot B, Gansett Road. This was the redoing the, oh. Yes, that's a good idea. They're over here. Mike, could you read out Gansett Trust?
There we go. Courtney, Mike, Betsy, Tom, and Michelle.
Yeah, Tommy, you're recused from this. Okay, those of you on the quorum, remember this one?
Yes.
Okay, we have a DEP number.
Yes.
Okay, this was, the biggest issue on this was that there's eelgrass, and we need to condition that the eelgrass survey is done prior to construction, but the survey should be done the end of May, the beginning of June, because we need warm water and sunlight for the grass to grow. Okay?
Yes.
There was also, I raised a concern about the shellfish in that area.
Oh, yeah, the shellfish
Should be relayed
should
out
be relayed out.
under the supervision of the shellfish board.
Right. And there's a condition that methodology may change depending on where the seagrass is located.
Correct.
And they would have to come in and get permission. Oh, you're not on the quorum. Just shake your head, yes. Thank you, Ed. Shellfish relayed, and I'll be back in just a second. All right, so we need a seagrass survey, end of May, first week of June, the shellfish relayed, and the methodology may change depending on where the seagrass is located.
And notification to the board before, if the seagrass is,
You want the board to look over the new methodology?
correct.
Okay, let me just write that down, and then we could have a vote.
It could be done on an amendment, or it could be, if it's not drastic, if Jen sees it and it's.
Yeah, well, she would see it, but she'll probably just bring it to us,
Okay.
too. Okay?
Yes.
Could I have a
Motion to accept the order as discussed and written.
Second?
Okay, motion and a second to accept the order as discussed and written. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? Unanimous, so moved, so approved. You're not abstaining. You're not abstaining, you're recused.
I'm already recused.
And Ed wasn't there. The difference is, if you abstain on a vote, it counts as a vote, and basically it counts as a negative vote because it's not a positive vote,
Okay, sorry.
even though it's not a negative vote. All right, Paul and, you see what I mean?
Yes.
Yes, you know what I mean. Paul and Patricia Hogan, 112 Racing Beach Avenue, Falmouth. This was, oh, yes.
Okay.
Tommy, Court, Mike, Betsy, Tom, and Michelle.
Okay, this was, they had to move that little oriental garden
Mhm.
and replace it and rechink the
The existing
existing
stonework. yeah.
stonework. And we did discuss and the removal of the little stone wall that was part of the little stone garden,
This here. Yep.
and then the usual conditions about monitoring the plants,
Yes,
and written in with the deed.
correct.
Okay?
Motion to accept the order as discussed and written. Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstention? Unanimous, so moved. Okay, White Sands Association and Gregory Marcotte, 59 Davis Neck Road and south of Davis Neck Road, East Falmouth. This is, oh, all right. Okay, this we have a little bit of discussion.
Not a problem.
Tommy, Court, Mike, Betsy, Tom, Michelle.
Yeah, these must have all been closed last
myself.
week, right? Right? You weren't here
No.
last week, right? Okay, not Ed. Ed's not on it.
I'm not?
No, this was done last week. It's closed last
here.
week.
Was I here last week?
No, you weren't here last week.
Okay.
You were at
Oh, that's
a
right.
meeting for town meeting.
Oh, I was at an earlier hearing on it, but I missed last week, right? Okay.
Yep. Okay, this is beach nourishment at the end of Davis Neck Road. And so the discussion came up. You started the discussion about the width of the
Yes, I did.
road.
Yep.
And then we got to the discussion, well, if the road's getting wider and wider, what about the planting? And that there are alternative ways to get sand to the beach.
Yes.
And so I think we could approve this, but require them to use an alternative method, and that the paths that are shown can be maintained, but all the planting has to be done, and the planting has to be done before any beach nourishment is done. And should the planting fail, if it not be maintained, then they won't get to have further beach nourishment on this, I think that's what we should say, on this notice.
We had also talked about potentially having them plant on the top of the wall there.
Right.
And they were receptive to that,
They
Yeah.
were,
and that was a good thing.
as long as they could still have their paths, I don't think that was a problem. It was the bottom of the wall that they didn't like.
I think even.
Yeah, and we should discuss that.
Even with the alternative placement of
Sand?
sand, I think the 8-foot path would be necessary. The 10-foot would not, but if they deleted,
They can go to here, they can pump from here.
well, I'm not gonna say that, the reason that I had brought up the 10-foot wide was to encourage the methodology to be other than. All right, just because I said, if you're gonna do something that needs a 10-foot path, you get a 10-foot path. Was not necessarily in favor of that activity, particularly when they're coming back up with the sand ramp.
Well, I don't think
pushing
they
it
should have a
down.
sand ramp. They don't
And
have
I'm
that.
not-
No sand ramp.
And I'm not disagreeing with you.
Oh,
And I think the plantings at the top are good, but I'm not necessarily convinced that that method of pumping is as readily available as we think.
The conveyor belt.
So,
well, then they can come back.
yep, all right, I don't have an issue with that.
Well, what if we just limit the path size, and then they can do whatever they want? They can use wheelbarrows if they want to,
Well, yeah, we limit the path size to the,
and not say they have to use a particular machine.
well, we don't say they have to, no,
No, we
right,
don't.
I
Right.
agree. We're not specififying how they have to do it. We're specifying that
The
the
width
path
of the
side is
access.
no
That's
more than
exactly
4
right.
feet.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. path size no more than 4 feet. No sand ramp. That's the size path you're allowed to walk in. Plantings in good health. And
Beach grass and the slumping of the top of
beach grass
the top of the wall itself.
at top of wall. And then no, okay, and that brings us to the bottom, brings us to another question. Let me just say, so I forgot the 5th thing I was gonna do. Path size, no sand ramp, plantings in good health, beach grass at top of wall. Oh, no further beach nourishment if plant's not in good health in future years. Okay, now this goes to a finding. The engineer testified that one of the functions of this was to protect the wall. And so the suggestion was, we'll plant at the base of the wall, make like a mini dune at the base of the wall and plant. And then they said that they didn't want that. And that would be protecting the wall. So we either make a finding that this would protect the wall and it wouldn't. If it is going to protect the wall, then they have to do the plantings at the bottom. So it's up to you. See, everybody see where I'm going with this? So what finding do you want to make?
That beach nourishment is not maintenance of a wall.
Yeah.
All right,
It's two separate issues.
Yep.
okay.
And that kind of protects us from that ever being used
Right,
in the future as a reason, a sole reason for doing beach nourishment.
right.
I don't think, yeah. I don't think we would want to say anywhere that we think it is
Yeah,
without the.
and I don't think they really, I think that was like, well, this sounds good. All right, can we have a motion?
I'll move to accept the order as discussed and read with the points that have just been added.
Second.
Okay, any further questions? Okay, all in favor of the motion as read and discussed, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstention? Unanimous, so moved. All right. William McGann, 5 Foster Road. This is for the order of conditions. This was to replace, repair and replace the, no, it's a riprap wall. I don't think there are any. Quorum.
Tommy, Mike, Betsy, Michelle, Ed, Courtney.
Everybody.
Except me.
Oh, how can it be?
Wait, how could Ed be on?
How could Ed be on it? Ed shouldn't be on it because it was only
Was this
closed
discussed
last week.
It was just last week,
Yeah, it was, because I don't think they had a DEP number.
wasn't it?
Yeah, but I don't think we have any special conditions, except normal special conditions for that.
Is Tom, THOM on it?
Wasn't there a
No, Tom.
Ed,
suggestion made that we have photographs before and after?
Uh,
Make sure
yeah.
the height didn't increase?
yeah, I mean, there definitely should be, yeah.
I mean, I can't vote, but I can comment.
Yeah, and that's a kind of a normal special condition and should be in any project like that. Okay, could I have a motion?
Move to accept the order as discussed.
Second.
All in favor of approval of order of conditions for McGann, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstention? Unanimous, so moved. Now, the next one also is McGann, but it's amended order of conditions, and this is to repair the dune, to replace this part of the sand that all got dug out in Sandy, ironically enough. And I think with this one, it's the normal order of conditions we would have on sand, and remember they had, I know what the thing was. Some of these had dune grass on the face of it. I think this one came in that way.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Okay? Could I have a motion?
Move to accept the order on McGann, or on the amended order on McGann as discussed.
Second.
All in favor of the motion on the table, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstention? Unanimous, so moved.
I'll move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Before we adjourn, can I just make a suggestion?
Yes.
That just for your information and maybe amusement, you might want to go online and look up, I think it's Naples News. It's Naples, Florida. And if you Google it, maybe Clam Pass is what you want to put in. There was a dredging project done in early March, a $200,000 project. All the local property owners needed to have it done to open up an inlet. And so they were all assessed and then paid the $200,000. All was very optimistic, and it looked beautiful when it was done. And it took 2 weeks for the whole bloody inlet to fill in. And it looked just like it did before they spent the $200,000. So there's a lot of recriminations going on down there, and a lot of painful reassessments of what can happen. But it makes for, there's all sorts of photographs and different stories on it.
That's an
Again,
expensive
Naples,
2 weeks.
Florida, Clam Pass is the place. It looks something like what we were looking at earlier. They're down the
Great Sibuwissa Marsh?
Great Sibuwissa Marsh.
Yeah, but it was interesting where that change took place. It was he had between 2004 and 2007, and that December 5th, 2005 storm that blew out Little Sibuwissa Marsh, and it must have blown out Big Sibuwissa Marsh. Okay, everybody can go.
We have to vote.
Oh.
The one on William McGann on the first one,
Yeah,
I didn't catch what you said was gonna go in there.
William McGann on the first one, we need photographs before